my guest today is Dr. Ankur Verma. He's an emergency medicine specialist based in New Delhi, India, who advocates for the carnivore diet as a means to improve metabolic health. He has observed that traditional Indian diets, which are high in carbohydrates, contribute to the country's rising rates of metabolic disorders and diabetes. So, welcome, Ankur. Thank you for accepting my invitation. It's an honor to have you here to share your incredible work and insights. So may I ask, Ankur, what led you to carnivore?
Hey, thanks, man, Frank, for getting me on for this Instagram live. We've been planning it for a couple of months and we finally made it. But
That's great.
so yeah, I mean, to answer your question, what got me onto carnivore? Uh, I probably started off with the metabolic syndrome in 2021 when I saw that my triglycerides had hit 600. And at that moment, I didn't understand TG to HDL ratios because as a doctor, I've never been trained to look at triglyceride to HDL ratios. Uh, but then, I knew why the triglycerides are high was because of my carbohydrate consumption. And I've always been a meat eater. I've always loved my meats all my life. But yeah, I mean, as we grew up, a lot of junk food did happen. And I used to always accompany my meats with a lot of carbohydrates like rice and chapatis and breads and stuff. So yeah, I figured I need to cut those things off to cut down my triglycerides, and then I read a book by Professor Robert Lustig called Metabolical, and then I started to understand metabolic health better. I mean, uh, in our medical school, I think metabolic syndrome was not even taught back, like 25 years back. And I think it's still not taught. It might just be like a passing chapter or something like that. I'm not sure. I could be wrong. But I'm pretty sure even if it's taught, it's not focused on too much because the doctors are not doing anything about it. Or they're trying to, but that's all dictated by the pharma industry. But anyways, so I understood that my triglyceride to HDL ratio at that time was 16. It should be less than 2, right? So, and high TG to HDL ratio is definitely associated and correlated with a lot of heart disease and a lot of other metabolic problems. So, I cut off all my carbs, my sugars. I was still having meats. Unfortunately, I did cut off my red meats at that time because I was still under the, stigmata of high cholesterol and high LDL probably. Uh, but then once I read that book, it took me down the rabbit hole of nutrition, and I was like, I've never been taught in nutrition as a doctor. So, I started to read up more. I went back to a biochemistry book. I read lots of papers. I've published about 40 papers till now, so I know how to read research and how to make my own inferences. So I went through a lot of articles. I still do. Learning is a continuous process that never stops, right? And yeah, and I figured my animal proteins is now why I felt sick at that time. I wasn't like overtly sick, but it was just a routine test where I saw that. And then through the journey, I lost about 26 kilos, 24, 26 kilos. My triglyceride to waist ratio is about 1 now. A lot of other changes happened. But yeah, I mean, the first thing I did was cut off carbs. So I was low carb. And then last 2 years back, I saw Sean Baker's on Joe Rogan. I saw Paul Saladino's reels when he was still a carnivore, Anthony Chaffee and Dr. Robert Kills. And, it just made a lot of sense to me. And then I realized what's happening in my own department and what's happening in healthcare across the country. So yeah, I mean, that's how carnivore happened to me. And, I'm like fully into it and using that for my patients, to reverse their metabolic health.
Okay, that's great. So, going on, as you mentioned, your patient. So, how has your personal experience with the carnivore diet influenced your medical practice?
Uh, it's inspired a few people in my department for sure, because the head of my department went carnivore and he reversed his hypertension. He had massive weight loss, feels looks much younger now than what he was, or what he looked like a few years back. Uh, Influenced my practice. We're doing a few researches in my own department, and we're seeing how unhealthy everybody is. So we've included proper dietary survey into our patients, whoever's coming in with metabolic syndromes, diagnosed with diabetes, hypertension, heart attacks, or heart disease, strokes. Alzheimer's, PCOS, and other autoimmune disorders, hypothyroidism. And we're asking them. It's not just are you a vegetarian or are you meat eating or whatever. It's like a 30 question. And that's one of those studies that we're doing. And we figured 65% of the population that's coming in with diagnosed metabolic syndromes are pure vegetarians, and another 30% are like pescatarians or vegetarians or omnivores, but they usually have like meats or eggs like once or twice a week, or less frequently like once a month. And even when they do eat that, it's all accompanied with carbs, like I mentioned, like I used to eat. So it's being seen by everybody in my department, and the doctors are also realizing what we're doing. And I mean, there's a whole community of carnivores out there, and people can do their own research as to how people have reversed a lot of their syndromes. And these patients that I'm talking about, I mean, they're all coming in on multiple medications. They've had not one but two heart attacks, probably not one but two strokes, or you have the young ones coming in with strokes, and their diets are abysmal. And they have this notion that the Indian vegetarian diet is a healthy diet, and it's not. It's absolutely not. It's loaded with a lot of carbohydrates. It's loaded with a lot of anti-nutrients. Yeah, and I feel that carbohydrates, exogenous carbohydrates, should be added to the list of anti-nutrients.
Okay.
That,
that's,
that's
that's
just
my
my
view. That's my view
opinion.
too. Once.
That's just my opinion.
So, have you faced any criticism from colleagues or institutions for advocating for a meat-based diet in India? And if so, how do you respond?
I still I haven't faced any criticism. I mean, since I'm doing this on social media, not on just this, but on my Facebook and all, people are actually taking some notice. There are doctors who actually come up to me and, I mean, they're questioning their own practices. They're actually questioning what they're doing. They've actually come up to me and told me that, we don't want to use high dose statins, but we have to because the guidelines say so. And if we don't, anybody can instigate a patient to sue them. And they don't want to get into those litigatory processes. But yeah, I mean, I've not faced any criticism. I mean, it's me who basically goes and questions them. When if I have a patient who comes into the heart attack or a stroke, and I ask him, this guy's not a smoker. This guy eats vegetarian food. He also does not have a sedentary lifestyle. Why then has he had a heart attack? And they don't even think about it. And I'm like, do you mind if I check the patient's B12 and homocysteine levels? Because this guy's a pure vegetarian, and they're like, yeah, go ahead. And I show them that the B12s are like in double digits, like absolutely tanked. And the homocysteine levels are really high, like in triple digits. And I'm like, that's the cause of his heart attack. Or the statins are not going to help him. It's only going to make things worse. And you're going to put him on no egg yolk, no red meat, no fat, no ghee diet just because he's had a heart attack, and he's going to come back with another one. It's the meats that's going to actually save him later on after you've dealt with this. So yeah, I mean, we've tried to have these conversations with a lot of people, which is nice.
Okay, great.
But
As you, as
India,
you, so,
India's a huge population, so you never know when somebody can, backlash.
right, yeah. Okay. As you mentioned statins, I have a question regarding LDL cholesterol. So, I've heard you discuss the link between low LDL and increased risk of heart attacks. So, can you explain why lower LDL isn't always a sign of better heart health? And what does the research say about the dangers of excessively lowering LDL, and how should we rethink cholesterol in the context of metabolic health?
So there are actually a lot of research out there. I mean, if you look at Zoe Harcom's work, where
I,
she took
I
out all
love that. Yeah, it's great.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, brilliant.
she took out all the WHO data and actually showed how cholesterol and LDL are inversely related to all-cause mortality and cardiac mortalities. I don't know where this notion came in that dyslipidemia or high cholesterol levels actually cause heart disease. I mean, yeah, obviously we know where it started from, Ansel Keys and stuff, and they found in some autopsies that there was some cholesterol in the plaques, but that doesn't mean that it caused the plaques, right? I mean, it was there to actually help you. And people should know that, our body is made of cholesterol. Every cell membrane is made of cholesterol. Our brain's covered with cholesterol. It's a precursor to, thyroid, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, cortisol. Helps with vitamin D absorption. So, I mean, it's like a natural antioxidant, and helps us fight immunity. And I've been seeing. So we're doing a retrospective study. We're doing prospective studies, and just recently or today, I was working on that with one of my residents, and we were taking out the data, and I think we saw about 20 patients from 2019 who underwent a lipid profile, who had come in with heart attacks, and just one of them had high cholesterol, and the rest of them had less than 200.
Right.
Two of them
Yeah.
had LDLs of above 100. The others had LDLs below 100. But what was actually not surprising for me was that almost every one of them had a very high triglyceride to HDL ratio, like 3, 4, 4.5, 5.
Okay.
So that's the thing. So I mean, and there are a few studies in the elderly which have shown an inverse relationship with LDL cholesterols, in terms of mortality and heart disease. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that's happening. It's something that's essential for us. It's I mean, it's actually going to save you from getting a heart attack and not cause a heart attack.
Okay, great. Thank you. Moving on to a subject that's close to my heart. My father sadly got type 2 diabetes, which then turned into Lewy body dementia after around 2 years, and that was a kind of six-year battle after that, and it wasn't very pleasant at all. So I know India is experiencing a significant rise in diabetes prevalence, with recent estimates indicating that over 100 million Indians are currently living with diabetes. So what do you believe are the primary dietary culprits?
Carbohydrates, man, absolutely. I mean, we rely a lot on cereals and grains, and it's not just diabetes is happening right now. It's been here for centuries. It's been documented like almost 6,000 years back by the first physicians that India has ever, documented, Charaka and Sushruta. So it's always been around. It's not just junk food and processed foods that people are blaming. Obviously, that's increased and sped up the process of getting diabetes and inflammation and oxidative stress and mitochondrial dysfunction and everything else. So that's one of the drivers for sure. And our breakfast all over India starts off with carbohydrates. You go
Mm.
south, you have like rice-based idli, dosa, sambars. You go to the west and you have poha. You go to the north, you have chole bhature and pav bhaji and parathas. In the east of India, you have potatoes and luchis, and which is all refined flour and all. So these are the breakfasts that people actually start off with. And I told you that the research that we're doing, there's hardly anyone who eats meats. Most of them are all pure vegetarians.
Okay. I've been home cooking since I was about 16, very avidly, and I've always been a big lover of Indian food. So going carnivore is one of the things that I've probably missed the most. But I've actually later in my career I became a pastry chef, so I've been a pastry chef for the past 10 years. So I know all about using refined carbohydrates, making sugar bombs constantly.
You're still doing that.
Um,
I'm still doing that.
I still do a little bit, yeah, just part time, yeah. So, yeah, but I'm transitioning now.
Yeah,
I don't touch it. I don't touch
exactly.
any of
You
it.
should
I
you should
just I
become
just make it.
carnivore
I
chef.
make it for other people, and that's it. So,
You should
yeah,
become a
um,
carnivore chef.
yeah. I think that's the way forward. Just curious. So, what are some of the most striking health transformations you've seen in your patients adopting a carnivore diet?
Uh, so I had diabetes and hypertension reversal in one of my uncles who had been on medications for 25 years, and this happened in just 1.5 months. He had been on 3 medications and for diabetes and a couple of medications for blood pressure and statins, obviously. And in about 2 months, he completely reversed it on carnivore. I mean, so much so that his physician had to actually, they made his physician actually document that this patient does not suffer from any diabetes and hypertension and does not require any more medications. And now whenever if he goes to a doctor, they all write no comorbid conditions.
Wow.
So that's a big one. A few others have reversed non-alcoholic fatty liver. There's another one who's been having a rheumatoid arthritis, and she's a vegetarian. She was a vegetarian, and was on methotrexate. And I gave her the option to try this out, as a last resort, because she's still young and is living with had deformities and couldn't wake up in the mornings without joint stiffness and aches, and just 1 month of eggs and chicken soup, and she forgot what the pains were all about.
Mm. Wow.
So that was something that was really inspiring even for me. There's someone there are a few who were infertile, and they were told to get IVF done, and they got pregnant on carnivore. So
Wow. Okay.
these were some
A
of
bit
the
like
no,
Dr. Kiltz's work is
um,
he's amazing in that area. I heard you say a wonderful quote, and this is from the benefits that I've experienced with the carnivore diet are mostly mental health benefits because I've struggled for most of my life. I did an ADHD test fairly recently, and I came up quite high on the autism spectrum. I'm not properly diagnosed, but it might explain why I've kind of struggled all my life. And so I've heard you say good physical health plus good metabolic health equals good mental health. So which metabolic markers do you consider the strongest predictors of mental health issues?
So I mean, the markers that I usually get done, the fasting insulin, cortisol levels, uh, homocysteines, the CRPs, ESRs, to look at inflammations, uh, and all the vitamin profiles, uh, your lipid profile, and we basically focus on triglycerides and that. So once you have those markers and all of them, it's easier to understand what's happening in the body. And I've seen, I mean, once you start getting metabolically fit, you automatically get mentally fit. Physical fitness happens by itself. I mean, it just gives you a push to do everything positive for your health. And that's what I tell people. A lot of people actually tell me, how is it possible to eat meats? I'm like, that's a very negative mindset. Start eating meats. Start getting saturated fats for your brain. Your B12 is going to go up. That's going to help your brain, and it's good for your mental health. Your brain atrophy will slow down, and once you get that, you understand how positive a person can be, and then how much better their mental health can be. So yeah, I mean, that's how I start off. I don't do too many mental health tests. I might delve into that later on, but probably people like Chris Palmer, Georgia Eid, and all, they've done a lot of work on mental health and carnivore. Rachel
Yeah.
Brown from the UK, so she was on my podcast also,
I
and
listened to it today, funnily enough, yeah.
so and they've all done keto, low carb, carnivore for their patients, and really helps.
Yes, great. So going back to the prevalence of diabetes and metabolic syndromes, is there a way, do you think, for people in India to modify their traditional diet to make them more metabolically healthy?
I think once it's there in their head, if they're motivated enough, it's possible. We have abundance of meats in India, and like I told you, pure vegetarian converted into a carnivore for her rheumatoid arthritis. So I think another thing is a lot of people think that first they'll do something for their health if something first happens to them, which becomes a trigger for them. Just like in my case, my triglycerides hit 600, and then I delved into everything. But then I thought, if somebody would have told me about these things earlier, if I would have had awareness earlier, probably I wouldn't have reached a stage of 600 triglycerides. It was still dangerous, right? I mean, I'm seeing heart attacks at TG to HDL ratios of 3 and 4. I had a TG to HDL ratio of 16, you know. well, that's a massive risk factor.
Yeah.
So, that's why I'm trying to raise awareness so people understand, why not get healthy before, uh, your body tells you that you're sick. There might be some signs and symptoms right now that you don't understand, that your body's telling you. And it doesn't mean that just because you look fit, you might be fit inside, like, right, physical fitness, metabolic fitness, and mental health, and mental fitness. Uh, they're all one yet different. You might look physically fit, but you might be metabolically unfit, right? You might be thin
Yeah.
outside but fat inside, right? And you start gaining visible fat first, and then your blood markers would probably go awry, which you won't even realize, and then your symptoms come. Sometimes it might just be too late. There are a lot of people who come in, who have had a heart attack, and they had, apparently they were absolutely fit, and they come in with a heart attack and they crash in front of us, and we can't save them, right? So, it's really important for people to understand this. Don't wait for something to happen.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
you can help. You
I,
can
I
help.
know.
You can help us. Yeah, you can help us save your lives at your homes by getting metabolically fit. You won't need to
Yeah.
come into my emergency department.
I noticed Dr. Sean O'Mara showing a case study, I guess, of an extremely fit young man with probably about 6% body fat, and then scanning his visceral fat, and this just and he's someone that is stacked, that works out you know
Yeah,
2 hours a day, and it just goes to show that it can it's not just what's on the outside, but it's quite frightening.
absolutely.
Okay, yeah. I don't want to keep you too long, Ankur. So this has been absolutely great, and I'm very grateful for your time today. So just quickly before we wrap up, is there one key piece of advice you'd give to someone struggling with their health but hesitant to change?
I mean, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. So, get more aware. Don't believe any of us. I mean, don't believe any of us blindly. Do your own research. We can help you go through that. But, don't lose hope. Uh, Try it. A lot of people do carnivore for 30 days and then just becomes a lifestyle for them.
Yeah,
This is a species specific diet. So, I mean, go for it, and you'll become positive yourselves, So, I mean, remember that, you want to die as late as possible and still remain as young as possible. And that's one motto that I've really picked up.
that's my plan.
That's my plan too.
Okay, thank you so much, Ankur. So for those
Right.
who want to follow your work and learn more, where's the best place they can find you?
So I'm on Instagram. I'm called thecarnivore.ep, and I have my own podcast called the Desi EM Project. I get a lot of guests on that. That's on Spotify, so you can go to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and check out the Desi EM Project, and you'll know all about me. And you can get me on probably LinkedIn. That's just Dr. Ankur Verma.
Okay, brilliant. That's amazing. Thank you so much
Bye,
today,
man.
Ankur. It's been an honor to have you here, and I hope to do this again someday soon.
Right. Take care, Frank, man. Thanks so
Okay,
much for having
thanks a
me.
lot.
It's been
Thank
good fun.
you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Nice night.